Einen schönen guten Morgen aus Manila. Hello and welcome to today's webinar on procurement and doing business with the Asia Development Bank, the ADB. My name is Arnulf Gressel. I'm the Austrian Commercial Counselor here in Manila. Manila, of course, being the city with the headquarters of ADB. So our office here, Advantage Austria, or the Außenwirtschaftscenter in Manila, for you, always a good contact point for any matters regarding ADB. Yeah, and I'm very, very happy that so many of you tune in today. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest. And yeah, I think we have quite a program today. So I will start with a little bit of housekeeping. So the duration will be 1.5 hours, a little bit give or take. Let's see how many questions we have in the end. I think after 1.5 hours, we're also, I think we all need a break. So I think that really should be the maximum time. If there are questions that we don't get to, don't worry, everything, all the questions are collected. And if we don't have time to get to them, they will be answered through email. I will be also happy to connect you with all the speakers of today's webinar. Yeah, so don't worry if we run out of time in the end. The language is English, obviously, simply for the fact that we also have participants from Austrian subsidiaries in Asia, and of course also the speakers in English. So we just keep everything in English for today's webinar. Yeah, the webinar will be recorded, so don't worry if you actually didn't have time to join us, or you have to run and you have to get to do something else before the webinar ends. You will be made available the video recording, and you can all look at it again. So you also no need to make screenshots or anything. Everything will be made available to you. On this occasion, I would also like to say hello to everybody watching in the future from YouTube. Thanks for clicking in. Well, today's program, we have 3 speakers. The start will make Francisco Moreno Velo from Acciona, a Spanish construction company, a large construction company that is very, very successful in the Philippines particularly, and with doing a lot of business with projects that are financed through ADB. A lot of infrastructure projects, a lot to do here in the Philippines. And Acciona is doing a really, really good job acquiring projects and actually also implementing them. And I think we'll be quite interested to get a bit of a report from the ground from Francisco. Then the biggest chunk of the webinar will be done by Julian Dozi, from ADB, as a procurement specialist, procurement expert, will give us details on how to engage with ADB, how to get to know what's going on, where's the pipeline, who to ask, where to get in touch, and of course the procurement regulations. And then Martin Kraft-Fisch, from the Austrian company Bernard, consulting company, Ziviltechniker, a company that is one of the few, actually, I have to say, one of the few Austrian companies that is being successful with ADB, and he will give us some insights of how to actually successfully acquire projects. What are the, what you need to pay attention to, a little bit of a report from the ground, so to say, which is also something I'm looking very much forward to. One quick remark also for me, this webinar is organized with the help of Go International, which is an initiative, a joint initiative by the Austrian Ministry of Economy and the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. Maybe if you can go to the next slide real quickly. Thank you. Which has a direct funding opportunity for Austrian companies engaging in project business with international financial institutions such as the Asia Development Bank. So Austrian companies can get 50% co-financing of expenses within this project. So if you have traveling, marketing expenses for consulting and all the like, this can be 50% co-financed up to 7,500 euros. And the next slide, maybe if we go, if you have further interest in this funding, then Adele Czechal in the Vienna office is your contact for that. The program is running right now, so you can file applications as we speak, and the funding period will be until end of March 2027. So we still have some time. I mean, right now we have a new government in Austria, a new ministry, and of course there will be also a new logo for the Go International and with the ministry, but the funding itself will not change because of this. So this program is running as is. And I think will give you quite some good opportunities, especially if you want to, like, if you're in the beginning of understanding of how to do business with ADB or with international financial institutions. You have quite some expenses. It takes time, and I think it's a nice thing when you can get those co-financed. So, which brings me already to the end of my introduction, and now I would like to ask Francisco. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Please. Hello,
Thank
how are
you,
you?
Arno. So thank you very much for having me here, first of all. And yeah, I think it's nice to engage with the community, and also I think in the good thing about Manila, as you know, is we have the opportunity to engage in a very multicultural environment. So it's really nice to be here with the with my Austrian colleagues to
Absolutely.
explain my story. Yeah? So as first of all, Francisco Moreno is my name. I'm the head of business development for Acciona in Southeast Asia. Acciona is a construction company with more than 100 years of experience. And it's one of the biggest construction companies in Spain, although now it's an international company. Right now, our total turnover internationally is almost 20 billion euros per year. And we are present in North America, Europe, Latin America, Australia, which is right now, Australia, New Zealand is actually our biggest market nowadays. And in Asia, our hub is in Manila. It's in Manila, and it has to do partly because of ADB, because also the ADB hub is here. And in the last years, ADB has been very present in the development of the infrastructure in Manila. Our core business is what we call linear heavy infrastructure. That's railways, like the picture you see is one of the bridges we built in Cebu. So our main business is bridges, highways, railways, basically linear infrastructure, although we have different divisions. We do also energy projects. We also in the water projects like water treatment plants or water transport, etc. And now I wanted to, I'll talk in my last slide. I'll be brief. I'll talk in my last slide a little bit about the key points that I think are relevant when we talk about the ADB. But I wanted to tell a little bit a story of how the ADB can help the development of the infrastructure in a country. So if you pass to the next slide, please. So yeah, I think I know the Philippines market since 2014. And one of the things that I liked about the Philippines was the need for infrastructure, because what you see in the left graph is that in the last, from the 90s, more or less since the, let's say, the end of Marcos regime and the new constitution, the country has done well in many areas, but not in the infrastructure. And for 20 years, more or less, for 20 years, the Philippines wasn't able to develop the infrastructures. And in fact, the spending in infrastructure per GDP was roughly 2%, which is quite low, especially low for a developed country. Developed country that needs to catch up with the first world countries, the spending needs to be above 6%, 7% should be more like 8%. And there were many factors contributing to that. But interestingly, the hub or the headquarters of ADB in Southeast Asia is in Manila. It's a big building, quite an impressive building. I think it was built in the 60s. And I think the staff is around 3,000 people, so it's quite important. And ADB is spending more than 20 billion by year is the amount of lending for different projects in Southeast Asia. But interestingly, for many years, they were not as much involved in the Philippines, not because ADB were, I think, not because ADB was not interested. It was just because the focus was, or the method of developing infrastructure was more focused on PPP projects or direct investments, and not as much loans by the ADB. And that changed in 2018, 2017, 2018. In that period, there were many projects that were not successful. Many of those were came out to the market as PPP projects, but because of many factors, there wasn't appetite for big construction companies and for investors. And more or less since 2018, there was a change, and the government in the Philippines decided to partnership with ADB, and ADB started to be more active and more active. And in fact, right now, I think the last year, the #1 country receiving investment from ADB was the Philippines. I think that's a #2 country was India. And in the last years, there was a lot of lending, a lot of involvement of the ADB in the infrastructure. In our case, this is one of the reasons that we established here our headquarters of Southeast Asia. We were awarded the bridge that you saw in the pictures was a private investment, but we were awarded right afterward 3 sections of the North-South corridor. Each one are investments of around $500 million, and those were ADB projects. They were developed by the Department of Transportation, the DOTR, but fully with ADB loans. And what you see in the right graph is really kicking in the infrastructure spending in the Philippines since 2018, and it's going up, and it's continuing to go up. And most of that investment, not all of it, of course, but most of that is the ADB. I must say that also there are other agencies that are supporting the infrastructure growth in the Philippines, like the Japanese Investment Corporation Agency. But I think the bulk of the heavy lifting is done by the ADB. So now, why the involvement of the ADB? It's a key element for the development of the infrastructure and the participation of international companies. We can go to the next page, and I will try to summarize it. Okay. When we talk about ADB, of course, ADB is a bank, and most of the people think that the most important is that they lend the money. But in my opinion, not the case of the Philippines. Philippines has a lot of private investments. There's a lot of liquidity in the market. So for me, the #1 reason why that ADB was able to push the infrastructures in the Philippines was their management capabilities in infrastructure planning and implementation. They have very experienced staff. It's an organization that has worked for decades in planning and structuring big tenders and big infrastructure planning. Not only infrastructure, I'm just talking about infrastructure because it's my field of expertise and it's where I have the experience, but they bring their capabilities, their management capabilities, and the overall understanding of how you develop in big infrastructures in a country. Then the second reason for me probably is having a fair contract. So the ADB, they take as a standard the FIDIC, and they put with really minor modifications. So they really respect the FIDIC standard. And the FIDIC, as you know, is the very well recognized contract for international construction or designing construction projects. And it's a fair contract that balances liabilities and risk between the employer and the contractor. Then third of all is the finance and payment security. So basically the payments, they need to be approved by the government. In this case, the minister approves it through their consultants or their supervisors. But then the payment goes directly from the ADB to the contractor. And that's also very important because basically your payment is guaranteed at the end of the day. And the FIDI contracts incorporate the dispute board resolution, and it's let's say, for those who are not familiar to that, the dispute board in a construction contract, there are consultants that can be called and quickly resolve disputes between the contractor and the employer, and they're independent. And also, if that is not, that can be disputed both by the contractor or the employer. And in this case, there's an arbitration in a neutral and very efficient international arbitration lieu in Singapore in this case. So you would go to the ICC in Singapore to resolve your if you have a litigation, which we always want to avoid, but we also know those that have been long enough in the industry that sometimes it happens. And then I would say also the very important is what I call the intangibles. And the ADB try their best to make sustainable development, sustainable infrastructures. And they try to have transparency, the ethics, and the good business in what they do. And they try to supervise it, and they try to enforce it as much as they can. So in that sense, we are in the same page. Now, some what I call some caveats that you need to be aware of is that there's minimum involvement of the ADB during the day-to-day implementation, and the responsibility always lies in the implementing agency. In this case, for instance, the projects that we have is the DOTR, the Department of Transportation of the Philippine government, the ones that take the decisions and the ones responsible for the implementation. There are recourses. You can go always to ADB if you have a problem, but generally they don't intervene. They try to, they're more, so the day-to-day, you have to deal with whether it's the Philippines or another country, with the local government, and you have to and you have to understand if that branch of the local government is efficient or not. In this case, the DOTR, I must say, is very efficient, and the experience has been very, very good with them. Now, it also involves, the ADB involves, brings some extra bureaucracy, because they do have to approve all the variation orders and changes in the contract, and that can add a little bit more complexity in the process. And finally, I just wanted to say also that we have to watch that the ADB is a loan, it's not free money. So at the end, the money is coming from, at the end of the day, the process will come from the government, from the Philippine government, that will have to pay the debt. And right now, just wanted to mention that the Philippine debt to GDP ratio is 60%. For a developing country like the Philippines, it's a little bit high. So so yeah, they continue in using ADB as much. Well, it's perhaps not. So you have to also realize that there will be limitations. The money is not for free, and there will be limitations looking at the future. And that's a little bit the story. Overall, looking at the international arena and looking at the region, or even outside the region in different parts of the world, I think we're quite happy interacting with the Philippine government and also with ADB, and we are able to develop our business, doing good business and helping the community and building sustainable infrastructures to help the development of the Philippines and Southeast Asia in general. And that's it from my side. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer via email.
Thank you so much, Francisco. Very interesting to hear what are the advantages and where you have to be maybe slightly careful, or just stuff that you need to know when engaging with the ADB. Yeah, I mean, we talked before the webinar. We talked, and I was very impressed when you said if there's an infrastructure project but ADB or JICA is not involved, it is not very attractive for Acciona. You would most likely not pick up the project. So it's the key component right? For you for doing business in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnold. Take care.
Thanks. So let's continue to with Julian, who will have the biggest part of today's webinar. Hello, Julian. How are you?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you here. Shall I?
Good morning.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it. Take it away.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Although now I have three screens, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to be turning my head this way. I thought it would be on the screen. Anyways, you can see the one side of my face much nicer than the other side during this presentation. So thank you again for hosting this important event. It's always useful for ADB for us to engage with the local markets of consulting firms and works and goods contractors and suppliers in our various member countries to try and get the word out about the many opportunities we do have available for you. And why you should consider bidding for some of those opportunities in our projects. So again, my name is Julian. I'm a procurement specialist in the procurement department with ADB. I've been with the bank almost 9 years now and in procurement for about 8 years. So I've done many of these seminars over the years with many different member countries and their suppliers. And you may have seen me if you've been to the Business Opportunities Fair in Manila, held every year. I've organized a couple of those as well. So hope I'll be able to answer any questions you might have about doing business with ADB through this session this morning. So we can get into it then. In my sort of hour or so that I think I have with you this morning, I'll be taking you just very high level ADB's operational portfolio, corporate strategy, just a little bit on that, and then spend most of the time really on ADB's business opportunities, our procurement rules, in particular, how to make sure you don't sort of get your bid disqualified by doing something that you're not supposed to. And if there's time allowing at the end, I'll take you through our website so you can start identifying the actual opportunities that are live right now that you may be interested in bidding upon. Okay. So, yeah, as you hopefully or may know, ADB, we have 69 member countries. We were founded in 1966 with our headquarters in Manila. 42 of those approximately are borrowing members, which means that they're receiving loans or grants from ADB and are the places where the money is going and where the opportunities are. So the other members, of course, are the European countries, North America, Australia. There's obviously no opportunities for you in these countries because these are developed member countries and are not borrowing at the moment from ADB, although of course this is not set in stone and could change. The most recent discussions have been, for example, with Turkey. They are expressing some interest to return to borrowing from ADB. So I'm not sure if those discussions are finalized yet, but I may have to update this map soon to reflect Turkey as a borrowing member as well, if that pushes through. In the previous years, I mean, as you would expect of the Asia Pacific region, some of our largest borrowing clients tend to be the countries with the largest populations and economies. So in 2023, those included India, PRC, Bangladesh, Philippines, and Pakistan. I currently sit actually in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. I'm outposted here for a few years. And they're often in the top 5 or 6 as well. They kind of go back and forth with Pakistan in terms of who's number 5 or number 6 in terms of largest borrowers. So those are some of the. Also, Indonesia is quite a large borrower as well. So it varies a bit by year, but those are generally the bigger ones. And we, as was mentioned, we are delivering this assistance as a development bank, concessional financing at different degrees of concessionality to our different members based on their economic strength, their debt distress, etc. Sometimes via grant, but mostly via concessional lending, and also a modality we call technical assistance, which are basically small grants where the contracts are signed by ADB. So you're working directly with ADB, usually to pair projects, feasibility studies, or to undertake policy work, or HR reforms, or these kinds of internal things for ADB. So in terms of our corporate strategy, this is not particularly new. It was approved a few years ago, but we still maintain these focus areas with some refinements from a midterm review that happened last year. But this sort of things you would expect to see from a development organization, from an international organization. We're quite strong on climate change as well, as sort of a new aspect of the corporate strategy, calling ourselves now the Asia Pacific Climate Change Bank. So really trying to focus all of our projects toward Paris Agreement alignment, and both strong on mitigation and on adaptation where possible. Our active portfolio continues to grow over the years, so I update the slide every year and it creeps up bit by bit. I always have to adjust my arrow. Right now we're at about 117 billion of active portfolio, and most of that still remains what we call sovereign portfolio. So this is the money ADB lends directly to the government through the Ministry of Finance, that trickles down, say, to the Ministry of Roads to do a road project, or the Ministry of Energy to do an energy project. That's what we call sovereign portfolio. Non-sovereign portfolio is ADB's lending directly to private sector companies within the country. So, for example, lending to a geothermal power producer in the Philippines. That's a project we did in the past, or a wind farm company. These kinds of things are quite a significant portion of our non-sovereign portfolio, sort of green energy companies that are incorporated locally within a developing member country and are investable either in terms of equity or a risk guarantees or this sort of thing. Obviously, fewer opportunities for your firms, presuming you're a traditional consulting engineer design firm or a supplier of goods or works in the non-sovereign space, unless, of course, you do have a local company incorporated in the country that could potentially receive a direct loan. Or we also call some of our public-private partnership financing under non-sovereign as well. We code it there, so you can obviously compete for PPP opportunities there as well. But the sovereign is where most of the traditional opportunities are for the design, feasibility study type consultants, for civil work suppliers, for suppliers of goods and other services, etc. You'll be looking at that 105 billion in terms of the opportunities available for you. What to say about this slide? This is a sector breakdown, and you can see just a bit more detail on some of our portfolio metrics. You can read the whole report and that link below if you're interested in going into the details of our portfolio allocation. I also have this slide which presents a similar picture. It's interesting how this slide has changed every year. Again, I've been doing this about 8 years, and I keep using the same slide. Maybe I should reform myself a bit. But every year I change the data on the slide, and it does jump back and forth quite a bit. So energy used to be big, number 2. Energy has fallen last year. Transport was big last year. But then a couple of years ago during COVID, health was huge, right? Health was like 20% of our financing back during COVID time, because we were doing all these large budget support loans to the governments for them to buy vaccines and all this sort of thing. Now health has kind of fallen back down to where it normally was pre-COVID, in the sort of 4 or 5% of our portfolio category. But generally speaking, energy and transport historically have been the largest portions of the sovereign lending portfolio. ADB had the kind of endearing moniker of Asia Dam and Bridge, because that's what we historically funded a lot of in sort of the 70s and 80s and 90s. In addition to agriculture, we were quite active in agriculture in those early decades as well, and we still have a sizable portion in agriculture, in water, utility services, urban services like bus rapid transit, education, but growing portfolio in the softer sectors as well. So, for example, STEM education, building schools, renovating schools. Perinatal health care is a project happening here in Uzbekistan right now, or other kinds of maternal health care, or these kinds of building hospitals, this sort of thing. So kind of all over the place, really. We have something for everybody. And I think that's what makes it a dynamic and interesting place to do business. By region, you can see it tracks roughly with population, but not precisely. I mean, South Asia and Central West have historically been our largest borrowers. Of course, in South Asia, most of that's going to India. We call Pakistan Central Asia, so Pakistan is under the Central West category. And then, of course, East Asia is mostly PRC there. It's PRC and Mongolia. Southeast Asia are your traditional countries there. They are also lending quite a bit more, as our colleague from Atsiona was saying. Philippines has been lending quite heavily in the last few years, more so than sometimes in the past. So that's helped bring up the allocation in Southeast Asia in terms of our portfolio size. And then certainly not last, but certainly not least, our portfolio in the Pacific, which is, of course, a huge region by geography, small size and population, but some very interesting and also very complex and challenging projects in some of these countries, such as Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, and the like. So, plenty of opportunities there as well, if that's your area of geographic interest. So we talked a bit about this in the previous presentation, but I'll give you a little bit more about why I think you should work with us. Certainly, as a large international organization, we do have quite, AAA credit rating and this sort of thing in the markets. We do issue bonds and this sort of thing for investors. So, we're a very well established financial institution, and once our loans are approved, this is AAA credit, right? So this is a very assured source of financing, and you can be basically assured then that the money source for the government will be there. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be paid if you don't perform, or there's some issue with the particular agency, but ADB is doing its part in providing the money and certainly providing the oversight. I think Asia Pacific region is certainly the most dynamic and interesting region, in my humble opinion, as someone who moved to the Asia Pacific region 15 years ago as a bright-eyed 20-something. Met my future wife, a Filipino wife, and the usual kind of story in that regard. But I do think there's a lot going on in Asia. It's a very dynamic, interesting region. Manila, where I had lived until a few months ago before being outposted here, so much construction happening, it just blows your mind, right? I mean, night and day, they're throwing up office towers 50 stories tall. And this is kind of the story in much of the region. At a pace of growth that's just unseen or unheard of in Europe or some of the more traditional economies. So obviously that means, a lot of challenges that come with rapid growth: air pollution, water pollution, solid waste management, wealth inequalities, exclusion of certain groups from economic opportunities. All these things create interesting challenges for our projects, but also opportunities for us to add value as a development financier compared to some of the other source of funds in the market that, obviously care more just about the bottom line than about the whole bigger picture of it all. So it is a great place to work in that regard. And again, we do have people like me ensuring that procurement are done fairly by our clients, that contracts are managed fairly. So you can always come to us if you have some concern, and we will make sure that appropriate procedures are followed. So you have this fallback from the bank to ensure that you're treated fairly at all times, and of course that we do have a zero tolerance approach to corruption and these sorts of things. So please don't bring your brown envelope to our projects. You can save those for other clients, but not for ADB, please. And, if that happens, you will, of course, be sanctioned, and you will not be able to do business with us for sometimes several years, sometimes forever. And we do cross debarments across the other MDBs as well. So if you lose our business, you'll lose the World Bank's business, the IADB's business, the EBRD's business, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all safeguards we build into the process to make sure that firms are treated fairly, and of course that processes are done according to how they're supposed to be done. I think no surprise then, given the scale of what we do, that you can basically find anything under the sun in terms of what you want to do. So basically anything on that list there, we're buying, and you can sell to us, basically. So I need not spend more time on that. In terms of the actual procurement we did last year, we did about 8 billion across 6,700 contracts, and you can see how that falls out in the statistics. Quite a number, obviously, of individual consulting contracts that add up the total there. But most of the value is in the civil works, right? So fewer contracts, but often of quite large value. Uzbekistan, where I am, is famous for having, I think, the largest single contract ever tendered in ADB, which was for the Telemargin natural gas power plant. That was over $1 billion for the single contract. So, you know, we do often do very large contracts, but we do many smaller contracts as well that are aimed to entice and develop the local markets in our developing member countries. And you can see that a little bit here in terms of statistics on our average contract size. So you can see that on average for civil works, the average contract size across everything, right? This will obviously be skewed because it's using averages rather than medians or modes, but about $6 million. Well, for consultancy, it's very small because, again, of those 3,800 contracts, about 3,500 of them are individuals, you know, just individual people hired to do a single expert's job. So obviously those contracts are usually less than 100,000, but the other 300-400 contracts are, you know, multi-million-dollar contracts for consulting firms to come in and do detailed design, construction supervision, project management support, feasibility studies. So those contracts will obviously be several $1 million. So this is our typical project cycle. It's nothing special. I mean, the project cycle of any organization, really, or any infrastructure project. It starts off with dialogue between ADB and the country in terms of setting a strategy for the next few years, a business plan, where do we want to work, what does the country want us to invest in. Then each individual project is taken up through concept stage. There's a concept paper developed, feasibility studies are undertaken. And then usually by that point, you know, the concept is moving ahead. If it is moving ahead, the loan will be approved, and, you know, detailed design and preparation of bidding documents and the like can start. And then those go out to tender, and, you know, the market bids on them. And then the market, are hired to start laying pipes or setting bridge decks and all the rest of it. And of course, then the project closes when the infrastructure is complete, and we do an evaluation. So consultants and intellectual services in particular can come in at all stages of that process. Works and goods suppliers obviously come in during implementation of the project itself. This is just rankings of some of our top suppliers from our member countries over the years for supply of goods, for supply of works, and for supply of consultancy. When you see Aus in these, it's unfortunately not Austria, but rather Australia. So I would like to see Austria, the other Aus, up onto this list, and hopefully you can help deliver that by winning more contracts. But in any case, you do see a mix, particularly in consultancy, of our developed and developing member countries getting up there and winning the highest amount of awards from us each year. Austria itself was a founding member of ADB, joining in 1966. And of course, that membership enables you to do business with us, because ADB is one of the MDBs that still reserves most of its procurement for member country suppliers. It's in our charter. It says that any deviation for universal procurement has to be approved by the board of directors. So most of our projects are still doing only procurement eligible from one of ADB's member countries. You can see Austria's contribution in terms of co-financing to our projects, and its voting power and shares on our board of directors. In terms of your top firms that have won contracts with us in the last couple of years, it's unfortunately a bit of a short list. We'd like to see more Austrian firms winning contracts with ADB. But I think one thing to bear in mind is our procurement data based on our procurement systems, which themselves need some improving, only captures the prime contractor. So I'm sure these statistics don't necessarily do Austria justice, because many Austrian firms, I presume, will be winning work with ADB as some subcontractors or as joint venture partners or the like, okay? So this is the same sort of picture in some of the other developed members of ADB as well, in the sense that, you know, some of your expertise may be best placed in a subcontract role where you're supplying one piece of the larger project, and those statistics don't get captured here. So I wouldn't be discouraged by this, but certainly, you know, use it as motivation, both to try your hand at being prime, but also to find a subcon or partnership or consortium opportunities where they arise as well. For more statistics, you can visit this website and browse our award data per country to your heart's content, okay? Moving into the procurement rules, procurement framework, we have two active procurement frameworks, although functionally now basically everything is on the left-hand side. The procurement policy and regulations that were approved in 2017, these are very important documents. And if you're actively bidding for ADB, you should have someone in your organization who has these documents printed out on their desk and has them memorized, because of course they are the rules for how you do business with us and how our borrowers, you know, act under ADB loans and grants. So those two blue books, they are very important. They're not too long; they're quite short, and they're mostly harmonized with the other MDBs. So if you bid for the World Bank, you can bid for ADB without much of a learning curve. They're almost the same. There's a few minor differences here and there, but pretty much in 9 times out of 10, you know, kind of the same. So. And that applies to goods, works, and consultancy. So, you know, if you have had any MDB experience, certainly you'll be in a good position to start bidding for ADB. If you haven't, don't also be shy. I mean, it's not that steep of a learning curve. If you bid for any public sector client where you've had to go through a formal RFP process, then it's quite similar. Okay, so if you've only done private sector, it may be a learning curve, but if you've done any public sector, you should be able to learn our procedures and mechanics quite quickly. They aren't that different from the rest. We have 6 core principles. The 2 yellow ones were added in 2017, focusing more on the bank's resources onto ensuring that our projects deliver quality and value for money. And what this means in practice has been emerging over the years, but most recently, for example, as of January this year, ADB has made it now the default that all bidding documents for large works should be evaluating on the basis of merit point scoring, which means quality and cost scoring, rather than what has historically been only least price scoring. So least price scoring means, of course, they still look at your technical proposal, but it's more of a pass-fail in terms of how your technicals are evaluated for large works, right? And then it comes down to who puts in the lowest price out of those technically compliant bidders. Now we're moving much more toward a default situation where they're scoring on quality in addition to cost. And I think, and this has been quite a push from some of the developed members of ADB, that this gives suppliers that may have higher operating cost structures, perhaps like yourselves, an advantage, because you won't necessarily lose out on price if you can put in a very good technical proposal, right? You may still come in a bit higher price than some of your competitors, but if you outscore them on quality, you could still take the award, right? So it changes the game in many ways, and the World Bank has done something similar recently. So we do expect to see an uptick in some of these large awards to top quality firms from some of our developed members who might otherwise have lost out on the basis of their operating cost structure. So that's ongoing now, and we look forward to seeing your bids in that regard. For consultancy, it's a little bit different than works, but basically we do engage firms and individuals. As I mentioned, ADB hires firms and individuals ourselves, so then you sign a contract with us, or you can also compete for the consultancy opportunities of our borrowers with the loan and grant funds. And you can either compete as a national, if you have legal residence in the developing member country, or as an international firm. The recruitment process is generally a two-stage for consultancy. There's a short listing process based on expressions of interest, followed by a full RFP process for shortlisted firms. But there's also a single stage method, which I'll get to in a minute. These are all the sort of two-stage methods we have. 90% of what we put out for consultancy is this QCBS, the one on the top, and the other methods are used much less frequently. Direct contracting is used, on occasion where it's justified, where there's a clear business need and according to the rules of our policy. But the other ones you'll see much less frequently. Most of what we put out, especially for borrowers, will be QCBS, which again is usually at an 80-20 quality cost or a 90-10, or sometimes at a 70-30. We also have this new selection method. This is only when ADB signs the contract. It hasn't been approved for use by our borrowers yet. It's called simplified CQS, and it's basically a single stage process where there's no short listing. It's just an open RFP to the market for selections below 500,000, and you submit a very simple RFP, and it goes straight to evaluation and award. So this is only, again, if you're trying to work directly with ADB in one of the contracts where we're signing with you, for example, for a policy study or an evaluation or something like this, then you might work directly with us and we might engage you through this new method, SCQS. Oops, I didn't want to click that. Okay, well, let me just put that away before it opens the video. So tips for success before I move on to, and can I just get a time check? I've lost, how much more time do I have, Arno? Because I want to have some time for the website. Sorry, can you say it again? We can't hear you, Arnold. Maybe put your microphone.
Sorry, I need to put the microphone down. Sorry about that. You have plenty of time. Don't worry.
Plenty of time. Okay, well then that's good because I still want to go and take them to the website. So I got a few more slides and then we'll get to the website. So tips. None of this is rocket science, folks. And if you're in business, then hopefully you're in business because you know these sorts of things. But I think it bears repeating, of course, that you need to network. You need to perform well when you do win something with us. If at first you don't succeed, try again. You will not be blacklisted if you are unsuccessful. For example, if you bid and you're unsuccessful, it's not like suddenly you shouldn't bid anymore, right? Keep bidding because every package is being evaluated by different people. So, even if you've lost 20 times in a row, you might win the 21st time, okay? Every evaluation is its own independent exercise. Now, obviously, some firms do develop a reputation as being bidding on everything body shops, and we don't like those firms because they are clearly not qualified for what they're bidding for. So don't do that, right? I mean, bid for things you're qualified for. But, that aside, if you are reasonably qualified, you don't have to be 100% qualified. But if you think you have a shot, then put your hat in the ring because you might indeed win the opportunity. If it hasn't been tendered yet, if you see the early stage opportunity, you do feel free to reach out to ADB staff to discuss it further, to find out what's going on in the project, what the timeline of the bid might be. And, hopefully some of the staff are willing to talk to you. I can't guarantee everyone's willing to talk to you, but, if you come to our events, if you come to our business opportunities fair, if you network, if you're polite, you're not pushy, this sort of thing, chances are most project team leaders will write back to you politely and give you a timeline update and give you a, basic sense of where the project is at and when you might expect a package to be advertised and this sort of thing. And I'll get more into that when we get to the website as well. But basically, it is a networking game. You have to sort of know a bit about the client, a bit about, who in ADB is managing the project, and this will help you thinking about whether you have a chance compared to who might be your competitors in the marketplace, what kind of team should you put together, and et cetera, right? And again, if you're new in this game, do also try and get yourself in as a subcontractor, as a what's called a hop-on opportunity. So contracts that are already awarded, where you can add some value to the lead firm, you know, again, as a subcon or as a partner in their consortium, because then you can get ADB on your CV, on your organizational project experience list, and it makes it easier and easier to do business with us, right? Because ultimately, as a AAA bank, we tend to be risk averse, and risk averse means picking people and going with things we've worked with before and where, you know, we have reasonable degree of certainty that they'll deliver for better or for worse, right? So what that, you know, translates to is once you get the ball rolling and you've won a couple times with us, the chance of you getting repeat business is quite high, provided that you've performed reasonably well. Okay, so there is that good pipeline opportunities there for you as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions, including during the bidding process itself, provided you abide by the rules of that bidding process in terms of the deadline for asking questions and this sort of thing. Always get things in writing if you can, because that also serves as a defense if you have to complain later about unfair treatment or something like this. And be prepared for things to move slower than you might otherwise hope. Often, if there are projects, you know, the initial document that goes on the website will say, this package is coming in Q1 2025. And, you know, here we are in mid-March, and you're saying, it hasn't been advertised yet. Where is it? Be patient, because often our government partners run into various delays. Q1 slipped to Q2, Q2 slipped to Q3, Q3 slips to 2026, but the package is coming. It's coming. So, you know, you're not going to lose out on having yourself prepared early. And doing it just gives you more time to prepare, right? And it can be a bit tricky when it comes to team members. Obviously, that's a bit challenging to manage sometimes. But in terms of getting your other aspects ready, your write-ups of your method statement and this sort of thing, you know, it helps to have more time rather than less, certainly. So expect this. This is not, you know, Western Europe where the trains run down to the second and this sort of thing. This is a part of the world where we often run into political issues. The minister gets changed. We have to change the project scope and whatever. This sort of thing happens. And the project, you know, that was supposed to take 5 years ends up taking 10 years. But it still gets finished one way or the other, right? Most of the time. So, you know, these opportunities still come down the pipeline. They sometimes just take time. And, you know, I think patience is an important skill to have as well when you're working in this region. What should we not do? Obviously, anything involving integrity, or shall I say lack of integrity. We do have a high integrity, high transparency process for procurement in ADB as a public sector organization. So you do have to follow those rules quite closely. If you make a misrepresentation, if you lie in your bid or something like this, that could be very bad for your firm. So don't do that, right? As I've mentioned, you know, most of the projects, with some exceptions, only allow procurement from ADB member countries. So, you know, don't come in with a JV partner from Brazil or from, you know, Africa, because they aren't eligible, unfortunately, in most cases. Don't be late, obviously. You know, read the bid documents and actually give the client what they're asking for. Don't give us conditional bids. We don't accept conditional bids. You have to bid for everything, or else you don't bid, basically. And, you know, don't get your bid thrown out on some technicality like your bid security is incorrect, or you haven't signed your bid, or these sorts of things. You know, you put a lot of time and effort into what could be $100 million bid. Don't get it thrown out on a technicality. Okay, I mean, as procurement oversight people like myself, we always try and ensure that our clients don't throw out good bids on a simple technicality. We are in favor of more competition rather than less. But if you blatantly screwed up, unfortunately, we do have to throw you out. So don't do that, right? I mean, making sure you hire somebody to review and copy, proofread, and compliance check your bids before you submit them, so that you don't lose out your opportunities that you could have otherwise won. We do have a fairly robust complaint process, a separate complaint process for reporting fraud and for reporting procurement issues, so non-fraud related complaints you might have with how the procurement process itself was run or how the evaluation was conducted, etc. And the two different links are there on the slide. So they're separate, and you can complain under either avenue. And if you're unsuccessful, you should always ask for a debriefing. If you've been shortlisted as a consulting firm, or you've been issued bidding documents for works or goods, you have the right to be asking for a debriefing. And the client, whether it's ADB or the borrower, should give you one. It's not necessarily going to be in writing. In fact, it's usually not in writing. It's usually delivered verbally. But take the feedback from that and use it to improve, because that's a great learning opportunity of what got you scored down and how you can do better in future. So always do try and ask for them. If you're a consulting firm and you haven't been shortlisted, you're not entitled to a debriefing, okay? And if you're an individual consultant and you haven't been shortlisted, or if you're an individual consultant, you aren't entitled to a debriefing either. That's not to say that if you ask very nicely, the team leader won't necessarily give you one. Sometimes they're nice and they'll give you one, but they aren't required to give you one, okay? They're only required to give you one if you've been shortlisted as a consulting firm, or for our borrower clients, if you've been issued the bidding documents as a works or a goods supplier, okay? Now let's go to the website. I do have these slides also about it here for your reference, but I want to actually give you a live demo of the website itself. So I'm going to have to change screens. So let me just bear with me for one moment here while I stop sharing, and then I will share my other screen. Okay. Share the screen. Okay. Now you should be seeing the ADB website. Arnold, can you confirm that, please?
Yes. Yes, we can
Great,
see.
thank you. Okay, so here we are, adb.org, and now I want to spend my remaining time basically telling you how to find the opportunities on adb.org. Everything basically we do is online. We're very public. We often win the Aid Transparency Index award every year for the most publicly disclosed international organization. Staff ourselves, if I need to find something about ADB, I just Google it, because our internal systems aren't very good, but our website is very good. So I can usually find what I'm looking for by just Googling things and finding it on our website. So what I want to show you on our website is really where you identify the pipeline and the active opportunities, okay? So you'll see a lot of a lot about us from just coming to our main site, adb.org. Feel free to follow along on your phones or your laptops with me here. Under the Who We Are tab is your typical, who are our management, our annual reports, our corporate strategy 2030, our next annual meeting, which will actually be in Milan in May of this year. So if you'd like to attend our annual meeting, you can request to sign up right about here, although it's usually mostly politicians from the different countries that attend this. You may be able to get yourself in if you're lucky, or if you're from the right sort of organization. But anyways, what else do we have under here? About our president, about our country offices. We have also our talk about anti-corruption and development effectiveness and other general topics available for you to look at under Who We Are. In terms of what we do, here you can sort of search by sector or by thematic area. So for example, if your firm is active in the water sector, you can come over here, click on, and apologies for the color scheme, by the way, I'm one of these people that is obsessed with dark mode, so I change everything to dark mode. But your page hopefully will look a bit brighter than mine, so apologies for that. You can still kind of see what I'm doing. So let's click on water sector over here. And I just, as an example, you can see this is kind of our sector page, everything we do in the water sector across the Asia Pacific. You can see sort of thought pieces, research articles, project reports, statistics, the people in ADB who are involved in the water sector, contact information, some of our social media and newsletters for the water sector work that you can sign up for, press releases, etc. Okay, so each sector has this kind of breakdown under the what we do portion of the page. You can also find our sort of economic forecasts and other sort of knowledge work under this part of the page as well. If you want to go by country instead, you can do that under the where we work. And here you can see by each region and each country how you can navigate and find out what we're doing in each country. You can also see, our representative offices. So we have an office in Frankfurt that helps raise co-financing from the European partners if you'd like to go visit them, for example. Or some of our regional programs, for example, CAREC or GMS are quite big programs that we run across multiple countries. So you can find out more information about those here as well. But then I'm in Uzbekistan, let's go and click on in Uzbekistan and see ADB's work in Uzbekistan. And again, you can see here some recent press releases of some of our projects, some of our activities going on. You can see some statistics about, our active and committed sovereign, non-sovereign portfolios at a glance. You can see what's called our country partnership strategy, which I'll get to in a minute because that's quite important. You can see, poverty statistics, economic forecasts, lists of projects. You can see our office address. This is where I'm sitting right now. You can see who, our country directors, contact information, our holidays, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is how you can search, on a country level. But there are a few important bits here that I want to focus on. The first is the country partnership strategy. Okay, so this is really where you start in your business opportunities search when it comes to a particular country. Okay, so let's say you're a firm that does roads and does energy. So first thing you want to do maybe is go look at the energy and road transport pages, get a sense of our energy strategy, our transport strategy. What are we funding? Are we funding rail? Are we funding solar? We aren't funding coal, for example, these kinds of things. So then you can get a sense of where we're working in those sectors, but then you may want to target a particular country. So then you come, for example, to Uzbekistan and you read our country partnership strategy as the first kind of important document that tells you where we're going together with the government over the next few years. So ours was approved here late last year and it's good until 2028. So you can download and open this document. And I just want to make sure that the screen continues sharing. Well, yeah, you see the PDF now, right? Okay, so this is now basically the strategy document, 20-page strategy document that sets out ADB's work in the country from now until 2028. So you should read this. You should get a sense of, the economic issues in the country, the development strategy, and how ADB intends to support, which, as you can see, we have 3 big pillars here. We want to help them transition to a green economy, support the private sector, and invest in human capital. And, the subsequent sections here start to elaborate on what that means in terms of specific financing and specific projects that will come down the pipeline in the years ahead. And it's within those projects that you will then find the bidding opportunity, okay? There's attached a linked document to this country partnership strategy that you can go through as well. For example, what we're going to do on climate, on knowledge, on what other development partners are doing, our results framework, etc. So this is a great place to start in terms of understanding the relationship between ADB and the country that you're interested in, okay? So after that, let's go over to the Work With Us page. So this page has a number of different things for it. I mean, if you want to buy our bonds, you can come over here. If you want to work with us as a staff member, obviously you can come over here. But I'm going to focus mostly on this lower half here, the procurement and the information on. So let's say you're a consulting firm. This is a good place to start. You can just come and click here, consultants, and you get a long list of sort of how-tos or frequently asked questions for the very kind of basics. How can my company consult for ADB? And here is a very nice short answer of, what are your first steps? How do you have to be a legal entity, you have to be incorporated in a member country. So we have some basic FAQs like this for you, whether you're a consultant or a contractor or a development partner, for example, or a private sector partner, or if you're an NGO. We have all these different sections here of just basic Q&A and basic documents available for you that may be of interest. Okay, so that's a good starting point. And then you can come over here, and these 3 pages here these 4 pages here are really the core of our website when it comes to business outreach, business opportunities. So take a screenshot of this, circle it in red, and bookmark it, particularly the projects and tenders page, which I'll get to last. But let's start at the operational procurement page. Here you can find, again, more information, statistics about what we're doing, what we're buying as a bank. You can read about how we're trying to buy more sustainably. You can read about our procurement policies. So those documents I showed you are available for download here. So you can read all those rules, and including the standard bidding documents. These are the bidding documents that our borrowers use when it comes to the actual works and goods tenders, right? So the one I mentioned from January 2025, this one is the large works using FIDIC Red Book merit point criteria. So now our borrowers, by default, are supposed to be using this set of standard bidding documents for their large works procurement, which is usually for works over $10 million. So if you have your eye on an opportunity above $10 million, you can go here, and this is basically what the bidding document will be for when you're bidding for it, right? So you can already prepare your compliance team to understand this document and to work with it, because it won't be very different from this template here. Obviously, the borrower changes the bits and pieces of it, but they generally adhere to this template. Okay, so all the templates are available from here. You also have, some learning courses, some videos about different aspects of our procurement procedures that you can look through. What does it mean to be a subcontractor? How do you do a complaint? These sorts of things. So quite an important page. Another one that's not directly in my department, it's actually a different department, but this is ADB's own institutional procurement. And by that, I strictly mean pens, paper, desks, lights, the desk. Not consultants. Consultants are considered operational procurement for policy studies and this sort of thing, but really like buying for ADB's own offices. So the chair I'm not sitting in because I'm standing, but the chair in my office, all these sorts of things. If you're interested in supplying that kind of stuff to ADB, this is where you find those particular opportunities. Are we buying anything right now? Let's see. Latest institutional notices. Right now, we are buying a firm to renovate our atrium and headquarters and our history gallery. Really, we're renovating that already? That's brand new. Anyways, that's news to me. Another firm to provide facilities management. We're looking for a design consultant for our Lao office. So these are the opportunities you can find. Furniture for our PRC office. Probably Austrian companies won't be supplying furniture to our PRC office, but you never know. I don't know who's on this call today. So if this is relevant for you, by all means, bookmark this page and you can find those opportunities here. But let's go then to the next one, business opportunities outreach. So this is where we put all of these kinds of events that people like me deliver for people like you. So in a few weeks, you will find my slide deck posted under this page, under the archived event materials over here. And if it's of interest to you, you can basically come here and click on this archived event materials link and find every business opportunities seminar PowerPoint, basically, that's been delivered in the last few years. So you can see all of them from 2024, from 2023. A few of them are mine, 2022. So at least for the last 5 years, every kind of BOS like this that we've done has been posted here. So you can read them all, even though most of them basically say the same thing. But if you'd like to read them all, you're free to do so. And we also have 11 years, 12 years of PowerPoints from all of our annual business opportunity fairs, all available here. So you can go back to 2009 if you would like to, and find out what the opportunities were with ADB in 2009. I mean, I don't think it's relevant for you, but I mean, the fact that we're that transparent, I think is quite impressive. And I'm quite proud of the organization for being this transparent with its work. So it's quite good in that regard. Coming back to this page though, you can also see what's upcoming. Okay, so in particular, you can see that our next Business Opportunities Fair in Manila will be happening in September. So mark your calendar, 16, 17 September. Please join us in Manila for the annual fair. This is a great opportunity to network with about 1,000 other consultants and contractors who convene in Manila for this event. And you, of course, you have the opportunity to have one-on-one meetings with many of the ADB project officers who can give you the latest insights about the latest upcoming opportunities. It's free. All you have to do is register before the sort of quota of 1,000 people is full. So get your registrations in soon, and then show up. And obviously you have to book your own flights, you have to book your own hotels. But I do think it's a worthwhile event to come and visit. So do consider joining us in September for this important event. Now, let's spend the last and very most important. If you forget everything I told you, do not forget this page, projects and tenders. This is where the money is, people. And this is the most important page, in my humble opinion, of our website, particularly for the market like yourself. From this page, you will find every opportunity there is to work with ADB, basically, in one way or another. Okay, so you will see 3 sub-tabs on this page: project, documents, and tenders. Projects means the whole project financing package approved for the government, for example, for 200 million to build roads in Pakistan with the Ministry of Transport. That's the project. And in fact, here's one right here, Imphal Ring Road project in India. Speaking of roads, this one, and what this shows you is various bits of information that are important. So it shows you the status. These are all proposed projects because they haven't been approved yet. But you can also search. You can filter by country here. You can filter by sector. You can filter by thematic area. You can filter by type, by funding source, by status, approved, active, proposed, canceled, by year, etc. So let's make that concrete. Let's search projects in Uzbekistan, and let's keep it to sovereign projects. And let's search only approved projects that are already, let's also do proposed projects. Let's filter, and we'll see what's on the docket in Uzbekistan. So here we have all the projects I'm basically supporting out here in Uzbekistan as a procurement person. Some of them are proposed, some of them are approved. Actually, I should add active as well, because active means they're effective and they're underway, and we'll be able to see more procurement than those ones. Now I've cleared what happened? I lost my Uzbekistan. Okay, and then there we go. So we're back to Uzbekistan, proposed, active, and approved projects. And let's just pick one, for example. Let us pick. I'm just going to find one that has some upcoming opportunities that I know are still in the pipeline. Where's a good one? Okay, perinatal care. This one's got quite a bit still coming. So this was approved last year, perinatal care project. And you'll see a lot of information from this page that helps you understand the project. Firstly, you can see who the project officer in ADB is. In this case, it's Heyman. She sits down the hall from me. You can send her a formal email through this contact form of our website if you'd like to. You get a basic overview of the project here. If you go to the project data sheet, it gives you more information about what kind of project it is. In this case, it's a loan. It was a loan for $100 million. It tells you what the project is supposed to be doing. It tells you if there's any environmental or safeguard issues involved, what kind of procurement is supposed to be happening. And it also tells you when the last time this was updated, so that the information on this sheet. Then we can go to the documents. And here you'll find important documents to understand the project. The first is what's called the report and recommendation of the president. This is basically your project approval document from ADB's side, the document that we take to our board to get the loan approved. And it sets out all the detailed management arrangements of the project, you know, not just procurement, but everything, safeguards, financial management, audit, you know, who's going to manage what, you know, co-financing, withdrawal arrangements, all of that stuff is part of this, what's called the RRP. So very important that if you have your eye on a project, you should start by reading this document to really understand the project. A lot of this, you know, opening rationale you can probably put and adapt for your method statement, because of course you want to tailor your method statement to reflect the rationale of the project. And then within the RRP, there will be an attachment that's called the procurement plan. And in this case, it's within what's called the project administration manual, but you can also find it linked right here on the document page, procurement plan. And they're updated periodically. They're supposed to be updated about once a year. So you can see this one is recent from August. It should be updated again in a few months. But this is really where you find the specific upcoming opportunities for each project. Okay, so you have your eye on Uzbekistan. You're in the healthcare sector. You found this perinatal care project. So now you open up the procurement plan, and what do you see? What's coming up here? So again, you see that it's a $100 million loan. You see the procurement arrangements are going to be using these different methods. They're going to be doing open bidding for goods, RFQ for goods for smaller packages. They're going to be doing QCBS for firms in most cases. They do have one firm proposed for direct contracting, etc. And then you see the list of all the active and proposed packages, the individual contract opportunities that you can bid on, okay? So here we see G01, sterilization equipment and medical furniture, $6 million, open bidding, one stage, one envelope. That means the bidding procedure. So, you know, you either have two envelopes where you keep your financial and technical separate, or one envelope where they're together. And then advertising date, Q1 2025. Well, I can tell you that's probably not going to happen because I haven't seen the bidding documents come to me yet. That's probably not going to happen in Q1 2025, but hopefully in Q2 2025. That's what I'm talking about, being patient. And sometimes what the advertising quarter here isn't always up to date. And you can, again, ask the project team for an update in that regard. But I'm sure it's coming soon. So again, if you want to have a $6 million contract supplying sterilization equipment, keep your eye on this one, right? And then you keep scrolling down. Laboratory equipment, 3 million, imaging equipment, 8.5 million, all this sort of thing. Obstetric neonatal equipment, 26 million. So you can see each package that's planned, tablets for 60,000, RFQ. This would be a local, obviously, buy. They're not going to go to Austria to buy 60,000 worth of tablets, right? We can get that on the local market. But for 26 million, for 39 million, these are definitely international advertising, right? You can see that over here. So these are the ones that it might be of particular interest to, you know, members from, or firms from your country or other developed members. Consultancy down after the goods and works, you can see there's going to be a project implementation firm for a 1.1 million, a behavior change firm, an evaluation firm, a baseline survey firm, software development, research, PIU, staff, individual consultants, etc. And eventually, when this project is further afield, they will reflect the awarded packages down under this table of list of awarded contracts. So then you can see who actually won, as you can sort of do your market research. And you can do that for some of the other projects as well, like the projects that are already several years running. Just go and look at who's won the contract. Then you get a sense of who your competitors are, or potential, you know, consortium members. Don't always look at them as the enemy. They might be your friend. You can reach out to them and ask to do business with them, and maybe they'll let you into their consortium, right? And you can usually see that under the tenders part of this page as well, right? So here you can see some of the tenders that have gone out under this project already. This was the one large goods and work package that closed a couple months ago. This was G04 for the obstetric equipment. So it was already tendered. And that one was about, I think, yeah, $10 or $15 million for this equipment. So that one you missed the boat on already, but eventually you'll be able to see who won this. So I mean, I can tell you this, the evaluation is still ongoing for this one, but eventually it will come under here as contracts awarded, okay? So all that you can get just from one project onto this project page. But let's go back. So, and again, you can see that for any of the approved or active projects. For some of the proposed projects, you know, they might be still at early stages, so you might not see a procurement plan on the page yet, right? Like if I click on this one, you won't see anything here yet. It was Resilient Amudarya River Basin Program because they're still working on it. Actually, my colleague is here on mission this week working on the procurement plan with the government. So the procurement plan isn't approved yet, but once it is, and once the loan is approved, it will go up here, and then you can start planning how you might engage under this project. So you have to keep an eye on these things. And one way you can keep an eye on them is this subscriber services at the bottom of our website. If you click on this, you can sign up to get daily emails from ADB with all of the new newly posted business opportunities that go onto that page. And you have to make sure you click on or procurement notices, goods and works, okay? If you want consultancy, I'll show you that separately. You have to sign up to our consultant management system and get the weekly emails from them. But for goods and works, you do it by coming to this subscriber services, putting in your email address and making sure you have yes put onto the goods and works notices. Although if I were you, I would still come to the website and check every once in a while. I can't guarantee everything gets pushed into the email account. So do just come to the website once every couple weeks and make sure you aren't missing anything by manually searching for what you're interested in on the website as well, okay? So that's projects. Documents is basically a different way to search for the documents under projects. And in particular, the important one here for you is to search for procurement plan. So you go by type and you search for procurement plans, hit apply, and you can see all the procurement plans for all of our projects and, sorted by the date they were updated. So these are the most recent ones. Here's a Cook Islands Renewable Energy Sector procurement plan that just went up a couple of days ago. And again, you can see the particular opportunities coming out in that project if they're of interest to you, okay? So another great way to find opportunities quickly with ADB. Finally, tenders page. This is obviously very important because this is where the live tenders actually go up. And you'll see the tenders here, mostly for the goods and works and for the borrower administered consultancy, okay? So the ADB administered consultancy, the ones where you sign a contract with ADB, those ones you have to go to our consulting management system, okay? But everything else, basically, you can find posted here. So these are all active. If you're a consulting firm that wants to do construction supervision in Bangladesh, this just went up today, and its deadline is 21st of April. So why don't you put in your proposal? Look, $21 million. That's huge. That's a huge consultancy package for QCBS in Bangladesh. So I mean that's a fantastic opportunity. I would definitely recommend bidding for that if you're capable of doing so for a railway project, an exciting project there in Bangladesh. So you can see all the active tenders here. I don't think that it's too late to bid if you only see it at advertising stage. Obviously, it's better if you prepared prior to advertising. But even if you haven't, I mean, if it looks good, then go for it. You never know, right? You might still have a chance. It's always worth trying if you can afford to do so. So these are all the active opportunities. And what else can I say here? You can also find, again, contracts awarded. You can find some, the information on that here, so that you can see who your competitors are. You can see that also for consulting services. And I think I need to wrap up, but let me just close with CMS for 2 minutes. So if you're a consultant, you go to CMS adb.org. And if you want to work directly with ADB on our own consultancy opportunities, you make an account here on CMS, okay? And then you can sign up for the weekly emails. You can find all the consulting opportunities through this website. You can see, again, the awarded contracts, the shortlisted firms, all available through this cms.adb.org. And last, but certainly not least, if I jump back now to my presentation, just as one final pitch to you all. Bear with me. There. Do go, when you receive these slides, do sign yourselves up for our LinkedIn groups, the ADB Consultants Network and/or the ADB Suppliers Network. The Consultants Network in particular has about 8,000 members and is a good place for you to seek out potential partners, look for bidding opportunities, and generally network with other people interested in doing business with us. And also follow us on LinkedIn and our business center, where we post about events like this and about other key opportunities of doing business with us, so that you can, again, be apprised of what's happening with us at all times. So hope that was helpful. And now I'll wrap up and pass on to the next speaker. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Julian. Quite the journey. Wow, it's quite impressive and very interesting to see the variety of information that you find on the homepage. Good input also, that when you see who was awarded with what project and possibly use them as a consortium partner, or just to get a foot in the door for the next project. So very interesting. And I mean, you mentioned networking several times. And I think the BOF, the Business Opportunity Forum, the date was just out. Yeah, 16th to 17th of September this year is a good occasion. And we also plan again to have an Austrian delegation join the BOF. So if you in the audience are interested in joining the Business Opportunities Fair in Manila this year, let us know. The details to our delegation, they will be out before the summer break, so that you have ample time for planning. I think that will be a very good opportunity, as it is very important to get yourself known and to know people in ADB in order to do business. And I think more about this we will hear now from Martin on a report from the ground, so to say, of and hopefully verifying what Julian just told us on how to do business with ADB. Martin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arno, for the introduction. I'm just waiting for my presentation to come up. So, as a background, my name is Martin Kraftfisch. I'm a chartered civil engineer working for a company, Bernard Group, close to Innsbruck in West Austria. I'm the head of the International Projects Division at Bernard, so my role is to lead or have responsibility for all projects we're doing in non-German speaking countries. I've been doing that for the last 13 years. And can we go to the next slide, please? So, and a lot of our work is for multilateral development banks, such as EBRD, EIB, and Asian Development Bank. A background to Bernard, it's a civil engineering consultancy. It's an Austrian-German company. So our headquarters are in Vienna and Munich. We have approximately 600 employees. The company was founded in 1983. We've worked in about 40 countries around the world, but with a focus on Europe and Asia, and also Middle East and North Africa. Next slide. So we work in the fields of energy, industry, infrastructure, and mobility. And you will have seen from Julian's presentation that we are one of the most successful Austrian consultants in working in ADB with ADB. But that's been exclusively for transport so far. So actually, one of my big aims is to get us into the energy sector and also the urban sector. And a lot of this depends on, well, how well as a consultant, how well known you are within ADB. For example, transport, well, we performed well on our first project, and this led to other projects. So we need to develop that in the other sectors as well. Some highlights of our ADB projects to date. Just a few here, but at the moment we are working on the design for rehabilitation of 2 tunnels in Armenia. We've recently completed a feasibility study in Turkmenistan for a railway. The main section is 170 kilometers, but the overall railway length is over 1,100 kilometers. In Bangladesh, this is maybe the craziest project I've ever worked on in my 20-year career, but we developed a sensor system and pilot tested it to prevent collisions between elephants and trains. So here I actually had to hire some elephants to do the testing on location. This project's currently it is being tendered and it's about to be awarded. And finally, another highlight was in Myanmar, working on another railway there, a 226-kilometer railway, and the modernization of it. It was originally built by British. We've also worked for ADB, for example, in Afghanistan, and personally, I have a framework contract. Julian mentioned before that you can either, as a consultant, be awarded contracts company or as individuals. So I have a framework contract as a procurement specialist. And there I've worked again in Turkmenistan, Manila, and currently in Bangladesh. So why would you work with ADB? Well, both speakers before me have presented this well, but from what I've seen, it's a highly professional approach compared to other clients. Their behavior is highly ethical and with integrity, and actually very polite. I particularly like working in Asia, just because people are a lot politer than elsewhere. They provide a very good interface to executing agencies. So if you're a consultant or a supplier, you're dealing with a local client who can be quite challenging to work with. The ADB team there is often providing a buffer. And when I think of a couple of projects that we've done in the past, without ADB, we would have run to a huge amount of problems, just trying to explain things on a technical level, or even adapt what we're doing to local conditions. The ADB team is usually highly experienced and professional, so there will be an operation leader for each project who is the main point of contact, and this person is essential for success. As a consultant, if you're doing a technical assistance project, and typical assignment is the feasibility side to enable ADB to approve a loan, there'll be something called a fact-finding mission at the end, where a whole team is going, maybe 10 to 20 people from ADB, to really pick apart the project and see and test whether it is appropriate for financing. Another advantage that Julian touched on, actually Marcel, was the secured financing. So again, in this area of the world, it can be difficult to receive payment or even know if the funds are available. With ADB, that's not an issue. Sometimes you have to be patient. If I say one caveat to that is, you effectively have 2 clients. If you're going for approvals to get payment, first you need your approval by your local client, the executing agency, and then also from ADB. Both speakers previously mentioned fair conditions of contract. For consultancy, compared to other contracts in Asia, it's fair and balanced. There aren't onerous obligations on consultants. You don't usually have to provide a performance security or bid bond, which makes it a lot easier to operate than usual. For contractors, it was mentioned that typically FIDIC conditions of contract to use. I know myself as a procurement expert, I prepared particular conditions of contract for quite a few assignments, and we really try to make sure that they're fair and balanced and that we're not changing the principles of the FIDIC contracts. In comparison to most clients in this area of the world, ADB really focuses on quality. So Julian mentioned for consulting assignments, you're typically looking at a weighted evaluation criteria of 80 or 90% on the technical proposal. And now for contractors, a big change has been this introduction of merit point criteria. The World Bank have a similar scheme, and this is a default whereby it's being scored almost like consultancy. So the idea of this is to attract higher quality bidders. So this should be of benefit to Austrian suppliers who are looking to work in that area of the world. Next slide, please. So how would I start working with ADB? Well, you need to find out what they're financing and where. Julian covered this in huge detail. 2 points that he mentioned at the end, the business outreach and opportunities fair, and also the LinkedIn networks. For specific projects here, I can speak as a consultant. The ADB consultant management system is essential. This is how you're going to bid for projects. It's almost always two-phase. So first you're preparing an expression of interest, and then if you are pre-qualified, you will be required to submit a proposal. This is sometimes through the CMS system, sometimes it's directly to the client of the executing agency. The most important first step is to register and really create quite a detailed company profile. This is like your advertisement showing how good you are. There are a number of tabs in CMS, and I'd encourage to create really a thorough and up-to-date profile. In CMS, in the tab contact directory, you can add persons to receive the weekly newsletter, which is a publication of tenders that are being launched. And for my company with 600 people and a limited international operation, this is essential for us. We can't, or only in certain countries can we really follow what's coming up and looking at all the forecasts. For example, we do that in India where we have a good subsidiary, but elsewhere we're relying on this weekly newsletter from ADB. And I've just included a screenshot there which shows how they're publishing this. For one example, you can see there's for an individual tender for a single person. A lot of these will be for individuals, and it will be international or national persons, and a small number will be for firms. Pay attention because a lot of these will be for national companies. So if a tender is, for example, in Bangladesh and it's listed as consultant source national, only Bangladeshi companies will be able to apply for this. Next slide. So what I'm doing when preparing an expression of interest, I'm carefully considering whether to participate. So for all opportunities, actually, we're considering in detail. My team does a risk analysis. If I think there was an example recently in an African country, it was development bank financed. And when we were looking at the security risks, we found that there are travel advisories, and that would be, for example, a project we wouldn't go for. To actually stand a chance of selection, ideally, you'll have experience in the country and region. So ADB in its evaluation is specifically looking at the lead partner. Let's take a project in India for railways. Well, do you have experience in that country? Or if not, in the countries surrounding that region or in similar conditions? And do you have experience in that sector? So the emphasis will be on the lead partner. If you have associate partners, their experience will count, but not as much. And this is where, as Julian mentioned, it's worth considering, especially for first expression of interest, whether you join up with a partner and maybe get experience that way. Secondly, do you have good appropriate technical references? And can you cover the full scope? So at the EOI stage, really what's being looked at are your references. In the second stage, it's being looked at, they're looking at, do you have the experts that are required? So in preparing an expression of interest, when you decide to go for it, your answers in each section should be high quality, but you can also prepare some standard ones. For example, in management competence, there are 5 questions which are always asked, and you can slightly tailor them to the expression of interest, but you can really standardize them and use them each time. You are requested to provide your 10 best references. Again, provide them in good detail, but you can also use the attachments to the expression of interest to provide further information. And at the EOI stage, it's pointless to provide CVs. It's not requested. It won't be evaluated. However, you need to know that you can provide a full team if you're pre-qualified. Next slide. If you are pre-qualified, tips for proposals, well, use and follow the templates. Request clarifications. Julian mentioned again, if you're uncertain about something, ask, you will get responses. What I always tell my team is to allocate your time for preparation based on the evaluation criteria. So usually something like 60 to 70% will actually be on the experts. Now, I'm not saying you'd spend 70% of your time preparing CVs, but you can make sure that they're perfect because that's where you'll be awarded points. Usually there are criteria for minimum or expected requirements. Obviously, if you exceed those, you'll score better. And you're looking for your experts to be technically proficient, but also to have experience in the region. Where I'd urge care is on certain aspects of projects which are really important to ADB and how they can bring added value which other clients won't bring. And that's going to be on safeguarding issues in particular, environment, social, and gender. Also on financial management, obviously they're trying to determine whether a client should receive financing and whether the project will be viable. So that's the economic and financial analysis. And the final one on procurement. So those 4 issues, or at least those 4, you probably want people in your team who have experience of doing this for ADB before, because if they don't, you'll have trouble in implementing a project. 2 other points is, since ADB, as Julian mentioned, is really focusing on fulfilling obligations under the Paris Agreement, it's always good to consider the climate change impact of your projects and also the adaptability or the sustainability of it. And final point I'd make is to definitely read through the conditions of contracts and understand them. So I think this is my final slide. Yeah. So my experience with implementation, actually, once you get going, it's not too different to other projects. You're working with a client and you need to fulfill your obligations under the contract. It's good to have a highly competent team leader or coordinator. This person should always be available, should speak fluent English. That will be a big help. The person should understand the contract in terms of reference and have a full grasp on the technical aspects of the project. Of course, what will be essential to success is if you have local competence and representation, so people who can go see the client on short notice. If you run into problems or you need changes to a contract or the scope is changing or it's taking longer, it raises those issues promptly, because my experience with ADB is that contract variations can take quite a long time to process. First, they need to be negotiated, they need to be costed, and then they need to go through a series of approvals. And finally, keeping records is essential. What I should have mentioned earlier, maybe there are 2 types of contracts. There's either lump sum, where you're just invoicing against milestones, or there's time-based. Time-based tends to be used for things like supervision. Obviously, you need to keep records there of timesheets. but also in earlier stage projects, there's kind of a hybrid modality. I got to say, I'm not so keen on it, but you're working under a lump sum, but you have to justify the inputs of each expert on this through timesheets. And if you actually don't provide the inputs expected, then you won't be able to invoice the full amount. But to summarize, ADB is a great client to work with, very supportive, and I would highly recommend bidding for projects with them. And if anybody has any questions or wants to work with Bernard potentially, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin, for the presentation. Really interesting to see basically the other perspective. I mean, it's one thing that ADB says we're good to work with, but when we hear it from the Austrian side, that's for us, that's even more trustworthy. And trustworthy, but it's good to hear. And also, I'm very happy to see you in the statistics and on such a high rank. I mean, the slightly sad thing about this list that I saw is that the #1 rank was VAMED Engineering in 2023, which is something that we will not see in 2025. So yeah, well, I guess it's all up to you in the audience to fill that place and yeah, take the spot. I mean, we're a bit over the time, so I think question-wise, I would keep it short. There's one question that has been posted twice, so I think it's a pressing one. So I will read it out. Julian, it would be for you. Options or available.
I answered it already, Arnold.
Oh, you did. Oh, sorry. I didn't catch
Second
that.
post was me answering it. Yeah. But you can read the answer. Go on.
I don't see the answer. I only see the question.
It's after
Sorry
the
about that. But
where the word yes starts.
I don't see the word yes. Sorry about that. Anyway, if that is solved, then I think since we are
Oh, but sorry, I only sent it to host. Let me put it in the chat for everybody. Maybe you're not a host, Arnold.
Okay.
If I may add to Julian's answer, because part of the question was on technical assistance and capacity building. Technical assistance, yes, these are usually provided by ADB from its own financing to ensure that projects can be financed. So this would be a typical feasibility study, and they would engage a consultant or individual consultants to check this. And on capacity building support, yes, definitely. On projects I've done, ADB will even consider things for clients like study tours or getting in expertise, international or national experts to give training. And then, of course, for implementing a project, ADB will require proper client organization representation, for example, from a PIU within it. So that's a big bonus compared to others.
All right. Well, with that, then I think, and with the advanced hour, I would say let's conclude this webinar. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thanks to the speakers for your presentations. Was really interesting. I mean, I'm in Manila only since a bit over half a year, so for me there was a lot interesting content for me to learn on how to do business with ADB and how to consult Austrian companies to approach ADB and do business with ADB. So very helpful for me too. Thank you so much. Yes, Martin, please.
If I may add one more point, again, as a consultant working internationally, use Advantage Austria for all Austrian companies. They're really good worldwide as well as in Manila. So wherever you're going, always write to them and say, I'm coming, I want to work there. It's what they're there for.
Absolutely. And also for contacts to ADB. So if you want to have an appointment at ADB with a sector specialist or whatever it is, we're always happy to help and set up meetings and help you get a foot in the door. So thank you so much, Martin, also for that comment. Very appreciated. Thank you, Julian, for the presentation. And I hope it was interesting for you. And I hope to see you all at the Business Opportunity Forum on 16, 17 September in Manila. Thank you so much.